Snow covered the silent ground. Broken towers of gold and crystal stood tall like frozen bones. No wind, no birds, no sound, only cold silence. It was the ruins of Valerian, once a proud alien kingdom, now forgotten by time and stars. A single human ship cut through the white sky. It landed with a soft hiss, steam rising around the landing gears. From the metal doors stepped a man tall, quiet, in black armor with a red insignia on his chest. His name was Ethan Cross, a soldier from Earth. He had received a distress signal 3 days ago. It was old, broken, and weak. The only words it carried were, "Please, help, dying." His order said to ignore it, too far, too dangerous. No value, but Ethan didn't follow orders this time. Now he stood in the ruins. Blaster ready, anyone alive? He called out, his voice echoed through the halls of a broken palace. No answer, only the soft crack of ice falling from above. He stepped deeper into the palace. The walls were cracked but still beautiful, etched with symbols of stars, battles, and a tall alien woman with glowing eyes. It was the image of Queen Alira, ruler of Valerian, once feared across 3 galaxies. Ethan found a large door partly open. Inside was a massive throne room, cold, dark, and full of silence. But then he heard it, a breath, shallow and weak, coming from behind the throne. Ethan rushed forward. There, hidden in the shadow, was a woman lying on the icy floor. She was tall, silver-skinned, with long white hair tangled around her shoulders. Her royal armor was cracked. Her crown lay beside her, covered in frost. Her lips moved, barely a whisper. "You came." Ethan knelt beside her. Her pulse was weak, her skin cold. She opened her glowing violet eyes, trying to focus on him. "I didn't think any human would answer," she said slowly. "Don't talk," Ethan said, opening his medkit, but she grabbed his wrist gently. Her fingers were cold, trembling. "I'm Queen Alira," she whispered. "My people are in cryo chambers, deep below the palace. I was guarding the core, but I failed." Her voice cracked with pain and shame. "I tried to hold the barrier. It fell. The core is dying. The planet is next." Ethan looked around. The walls were shaking slightly. The power was unstable. She had held off a planetary meltdown alone for who knows how long. That explained her weakness. She wasn't just injured, she was burned from the inside out. Ethan quickly connected a power cell from his suit to a glowing panel on her wrist armor. The device hummed. Her breathing eased slightly. "You're stabilizing, but we need to get off this planet," he said. She shook her head. "No, not me." She pointed toward the floor. "Save my people." Ethan looked at the map on her device. There were hundreds of life signs below, frozen in cryosleep. They would all die if the core collapsed. "You'll die if I don't carry you," Ethan said. Her lips smiled faintly. "I already chose death, but you came, so I owe you one wish. Anything in my power, I give it to you." He looked into her glowing eyes, even in pain. She held power, pride, and sorrow. She was a queen who had never begged, but now she offered him everything. Ethan stayed quiet. She expected him to ask for money, fame, a ship, a kingdom. But instead, he leaned closer and whispered one word. Her eyes widened in shock. "You can't be serious." He smiled gently. "I've never been more serious," he said. Her face changed, at first disbelief, then fear, and finally an emotion even she didn't understand. She reached for his hand again, gripping it tightly. "This time, I don't even know your name." She said, "Ethan." He replied, "Human." "Ethan," she stared at him then. For the first time in her life, Queen Alira felt her heart beat for someone other than her people, and for the first time, she was afraid of what it meant. The palace rumbled again. Time was running out. But something new had been born in that broken room. Not just hope, not just survival, but a bond no power could buy. And the galaxy would never be the same again. Asterisk Queen. Alira sat in silence. She rested on a soft healing bed, deep inside the human ship. Her silver skin was warmer now, her wounds healing slowly, but something inside her stayed broken. She looked out of the small window, watching her planet get smaller as they moved through space. Once a proud home, now a dying world of ice and silence. All she had left were her sleeping people, Ethan. And one promise she had made while barely alive. I offer you one wish. Anything. She thought the human would ask for power, maybe a command over the Valerian fleet, maybe control of the rare star mines, even her own palace. But when she asked what he wanted, his answer shattered her. I choose you, he had said, not her. Crown, not her throne, just her. No one had ever chosen her. Not Alira, the woman. Only the queen, the ruler, the symbol. Now she couldn't stop thinking about him. Ethan sat at the edge of the ship's bridge, fixing a cracked panel. He didn't act like someone who had power over her. He didn't even speak unless necessary. He just worked, quiet, calm, focused. That made her heart beat harder, and it scared her. Back when she was young, Alira was trained never to cry, never to show weakness. Never to smile unless it was victory. Advisors told her, a queen must rule with eyes of stone and a heart of fire. So she did. She led armies, judged enemies, walked alone through fire and dust, and yet she had always felt a hollow inside. Like she was wearing a mask no one could ever remove. Now this human looked at her like she wasn't a symbol. He saw her truly. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. A soft beep echoed in the ship. The cryopods below were stable now. Her people were safe for now. Alira stood and walked slowly toward Ethan. He didn't turn around. You should be resting, he said quietly. I've rested enough, she replied. Her voice held strength again, but not the sharpness it once had. She walked around him and looked him in the eye. You could have asked for anything, she said. Why would you ask for me? Ethan stood up, cleaning his hands with a cloth. He met her gaze without fear. You were dying, he said, and still your last thought was your people, not yourself. Alira blinked. That's what rulers do. No, Ethan said. That's what good people do. Silence sat between them like fog. Alira looked down, unsure of what to say. She was never taught how to reply to kindness. It's only to threats, deals, and praise. What if I said it's forbidden? She asked. No queen can bond with an outsider not without breaking ancient law. Ethan shrugged. I didn't ask for a crown or a throne, he said. I asked for your time, your company. Nothing more. Her lips trembled, just a little. It was the first time in her life she didn't know what to do. A woman who once commanded fleets now stood helpless before one quiet human. Suddenly, the ship alarm blinked. The galaxy had learned. Of her survival, messages poured in, some begging for her return, others calling her weak for being saved by a human, and one message. From her own high council, the queen must undergo the rite. She must prove she was not claimed by an outsider. In weakness, return for judgment. Her heart sank. They want me to go through the ancient trial, she said. They think I've been touched, changed. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You were dying, he said. Now you're breathing. Not weakness, that's survival. Alira sat down slowly. They will not understand, she whispered. If I let you stay near me, if they think I care for you, they'll see it as betrayal. Ethan looked at her with calm eyes. Then let them see, he said. I didn't choose you for their approval. The words hit her like thunder. No one had ever said that to her. Not in all her years as queen. For a moment, she felt like just a woman, not a ruler, not a symbol, just a person, and it was terrifying and beautiful. She looked at Ethan again, not with the eyes of a queen but as a woman who had been alone for too long, and in that moment, her decision was made. "If you truly mean your choice," she said softly, "then you will face the right of worthiness." "I'm ready," Ethan said. Without pause, Alira nodded, but her eyes held something new: fear. Because if he failed, she would lose more than her crown. She would lose the only one who had ever chosen her. The royal court of Valerian was made of cold stone, glowing crystals, and sharp eyes. Ancient alien lords sat on high seats, robes heavy with silver threads. They looked down as Queen Alira entered the chamber, and walking beside her was a human. Whispers filled the air like smoke. "She brought him here. Is this the one?" "That's the outsider who touched the queen." Ethan walked calmly. He felt the weight of every stare, every word, every blade hidden beneath smiles, but he kept walking, step by step, just behind Alira. She walked tall, head high, but her hands were cold, her heart unsure. At the end of the hall, the high speaker stood. He was old, his eyes like blue fire. He raised his voice with cold control. "Queen Alira, you return not as ruler, but as one who is questioned." "I understand," she said softly. "I come willingly." The speaker looked at Ethan, and this human, he said with clear disgust. "You offer him favor? Do you deny he holds a claim to you?" Alira stepped forward. "I do not deny," she said. "I gave him a wish, and he chose me, not my power, not my riches. Just me." The court gasped. The silence was loud. Never in Valerian's history had a queen been chosen. Queens chose kings, kingdoms, even stars, but never the other way. The high speaker's voice shook. "Then you have broken sacred law," he said. "Unless this human proves his worthiness by surviving the trial of truth, your crown shall be broken, your line ended." Alira lowered her head. "I accept the law," she said, "but I will not accept fear." Ethan stepped forward now. "I'll take your trial," he said simply. The speaker sneered. "It has ended many warriors, even royal blood." "I'm not them," Ethan said, "and I'm not here to take her throne." He looked around the room. "I'm here because I saw a dying soul, and I didn't look away." Some in the court looked shaken, others angry, and a few unsure. The speaker raised his hand. "So be it. Let the trial begin. The whole galaxy shall witness later that day." The galaxy watched from floating screens. Billions tuned in from spaceports, royal stations, slums, and cities. A single human man, standing on a platform of glass, surrounded by spinning lights. It was not a fight of strength, but of spirit. The trial of truth tested a person's heart. It entered the mind, showed fears, regrets, memories, and asked one question: "Are you truly worthy?" Ethan stood still as the glowing light entered his chest. He gasped, but did not fall. Instead, visions filled his eyes. He saw his childhood broken homes, hunger, pain. He saw war-losing friends, making choices that haunted him. He saw himself walking into fire just to save a little girl. He saw Alira's hand reaching out from ice. The machine scanned his soul. It felt guilt, strength, kindness, and something powerful: love. But not for power, not for fame, just for her. The trial ended in silence. Ethan dropped to one knee, sweating but still breathing. The chamber lights dimmed, then turned bright. A soft voice spoke, clear and ancient. "Worthy." The speaker's jaw tightened. The court fell into chaos, some cheering, others furious. A human had passed the trial. It hadn't happened in 1,000 years. Queen Alira walked toward him. She knelt and helped him. "Stand, you're shaking," she said softly. "I saw everything," Ethan whispered. "Even the parts of myself I wanted to forget." Alira nodded. "That's the cost of truth." Suddenly, a voice from the shadows echoed, no outsider. We'll take our queen. A blade flashed an assassin from one of the noble houses. He moved fast, blade aimed at Ethan's chest. But Alira stepped in front. The blade cut her side, red blood spilling on white robes. Guards rushed in, tackled the attacker. Ethan held her up, panic in his eyes. "Why did you do that?" He shouted. She smiled weakly. "Because you chose me. And now I choose you." The court was silent once more. They had seen love, sacrifice, truth, and courage, not just from the human, but from their queen. In that moment, Alira didn't need to speak. Her people saw everything in her eyes, not weakness, but power reborn. She looked at the court and said, "The world has changed. Let us not fear it. Let us lead it." The trial of truth had ended, but the whispers had not. Many in the court still doubted the human. Some feared him, some hated him, but one noble house, the House of Ras, wanted him dead, the queen's. Wound was shallow, but the message was clear. There would be no peace without challenge, so the council declared one final test: the trial of blood and spirit. A path only royal protectors had ever walked. It was older than the throne, and no outsider had ever returned alive. Ethan stood before the entrance of the sacred jungle, a forest moon bathed in red mist and filled with ancient creatures. Alira placed her hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to prove anything to me," she said. But Ethan shook his head. "I'm not proving this for them. I'm doing this for you." The queen looked down. In her eyes was fear she could not admit. The fear of losing someone she had only just begun to care for. He stepped into the mist, and the jungle closed behind him like a giant mouth. Inside, everything was alive. The trees breathed softly. Their roots moved under the soil. The wind spoke in whispers, some in alien tongues, some in forgotten voices. Ethan walked slowly, each step careful, each sound watched. He had no map, no guide, only instinct. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time. Twisted inside the trial zone, his armor was scratched. His skin burned from unseen thorns. Then came the first test, a beast of echoes. A creature of shadows, its body made of stone and memory. It attacked with no warning, a tail like a whip, claws like swords. Ethan ducked, rolled, and fired his weapon, but lasers only made the beast angrier. He had to fight smart. He climbed. The rocks tricked it into chasing him through narrow trees, until it crashed into a stone wall, breaking its own legs. Ethan stood over it, breathing hard, but instead of killing it, he backed away. The beast stared at him with glowing eyes and limped into the mist. It had been defeated but not destroyed. The forest seemed to breathe slower now, as if the jungle respected his choice. Next came the river of pain. A bridge made of vines crossed. Over it, under the surface, glowing faces screamed silently. Ghosts of past warriors. If one listened too long, they would jump to their deaths. Ethan kept his eyes forward, but halfway across, the whispers grew louder. "You failed them. You should have died instead. You're not worthy of her." He clenched his fists. Memories returned his lost team. The little girl he couldn't save. All of it clawed at his heart. Then he heard one clear voice, Alira's. Not real, but in his mind, "You didn't fail. You survived." He took a breath and crossed the final step. The whispers vanished. The river stilled. At last, he reached the final circle, a wide-open space, moonlight falling through the trees. A stone stood in the middle, glowing softly. This was the heart of the forest. To finish the trial, Ethan had to spill a drop of blood onto the stone. A sign of humility and courage, he pulled a small blade from his belt, cut his palm, and let the blood fall. The ground shook gently. A beam of light rose from the stone, reaching into the sky. And a voice spoke not in words, but in feeling. "You have faced beasts, your guilt, your fear. And you chose mercy, memory, and love. You are no longer outsider. You are worthy. The queen watched the light from her ship. Tears fell from her eyes. Not of sadness, but of relief. No. Man had ever walked the trial of blood and returned alive. And now? A human had done it. When Ethan returned, covered in dirt, wounds, and silence, Alira ran to him. Not as a queen, but as a woman whose heart could no longer stay hidden. She touched his cheek. You came back? He smiled tiredly. I told you I would. The royal guards dropped their weapons. The council stood and bowed. Even the enemies stayed quiet, because they all knew now this man was not just a visitor. He was a force of spirit, and the queen who once ruled galaxies had finally found someone who ruled her heart. Ethan sat alone under the starlight. The trial of blood and spirit was behind him. His body ached, his hands were wrapped in cloth, his armor scratched and faded, but his heart, it was the heaviest part of him. He had survived beasts, illusions, pain, and fear. He had walked through the jungle of the hollow, stared into his own shame. But tonight, all he could think about was her. Queen Alira stood on the high balcony above him. She wore no crown tonight, no royal robe, only a simple robe of midnight silk that moved with the breeze. For once, she wasn't a queen. She was just a woman with quiet eyes. She had watched Ethan from afar all day, listened to the nobles argue over his future. He had done the impossible, passed every ancient trial, and yet some still whispered, a queen and a human. Impossible? She's losing herself. He's just a phase. But Alira had already made her choice, and now she was ready to speak. She walked slowly to where Ethan sat. He didn't hear her at first, until her shadow fell beside him. He looked up, tired eyes, but full of warmth. You should be resting, he said gently. I could say the same to you, she replied, sitting beside him on the stone bench. They watched the sky in silence. Valerian's twin moons floated above them. Soft wind carried the sound of distant music. Alira finally broke the silence. Do you know what I feared most? She whispered. Not the trials, not the people, not the law. Ethan turned to her. No? She shook her head. I feared that you would change your mind, that after seeing my world, my blood, my broken pieces, you would walk away. Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out something. It was a small cloth badge, faded, torn, with a symbol of Earth's old soldier wings. This was from my last unit, he said softly. I kept it as a reminder of who I used to be. He placed it in her hand. But now, I think it's time I let that past go. Alira looked at the badge, then at him. I don't want you to become something you're not, she said. I don't want to take away your world. Ethan smiled. You didn't take anything, he whispered. You gave me something new. Their hands brushed together, not by accident this time. It was a choice, a quiet one, but deep. You've lived so long behind walls, he said. You wear the crown like armor, your eyes like weapons, but deep inside, I see someone who just wants to be held. Her breath caught in her throat. He was right. No one had ever spoken to her that way. They praised her power, feared her command, but only he had seen. The woman behind the queen, I don't know how to love someone, she whispered, her voice shaking now. I was never taught. Never allowed. Ethan gently took her hand. Love isn't taught, he said. It's felt. Even when you're scared. She looked down. I'm still scared. So am I. Ethan replied, but I'd rather be scared with you than fearless alone. The silence returned. But now it was soft, full, peaceful. Alira leaned her head on his shoulder, just for a moment, just to feel human. The weight of her crown melted away in that single act. From the palace towers, a few guards watched. One whispered, she's smiling. Another nodded. I've never seen her like that before. Later that night, Alira returned to her chambers. She looked at herself in the mirror, no armor, no crown, just herself, for the first time. She touched her own face and saw not a ruler, but a woman ready to feel, ready to begin. She opened a drawer, pulled out an old crystal pendant. It was given only once in a queen's lifetime, to the one she would bind her heart to publicly, forever. She stared at it for a long time, then closed her fingers around it. The decision had been made. The heart had whispered, and the queen had listened. The palace hall had never been so quiet. Thousands of glowing guests stood in silence. Leaders from distant planets, nobles, warriors, and even enemies were present. All came to witness what they believed was impossible. A human man was about to stand beside the alien queen, not as a soldier, not as a servant, but as her chosen one. Queen Alira stood at the center of the sacred ring. She wore a silver robe made from living silk, glowing with soft light. No crown, no blade, just the pendant of truth in her hands. Her voice echoed in the great chamber. Today, I do not speak as ruler. I speak as Alira, daughter of Valerian, a woman who has walked the path of fire and loneliness. I offer this bond, not because of law, not because of duty. She turned to Ethan, standing before her in a dark, formal robe, but because he saw me, not my power. Gasps filled the chamber. It was the first time a queen had ever spoken such words. The pendant she held glowed blue, then gold. She stepped closer to Ethan. You entered my world when it was ending, she whispered to him. You gave hope to the hopeless, warmth to a frozen heart. Ethan took her hand slowly. I didn't come here for a crown, he said gently. I came because I found someone worth bleeding for. Tears shimmered in her eyes. A queen crying not for loss, but for love. The bond ceremony was simple but sacred. A thread of light connected their hearts. Spirits of past queens appeared above them in glowing form. They circled in silence, then bowed. The ancestors had accepted him, and with that, the bond was complete. Outside the palace, the people of Valerian stood beneath the twin moons. They watched the glowing skies as the union was marked by a bright pillar of light. It reached the heavens, touching satellites and warships. And then something happened. One by one, old enemy ships lowered their weapons. One by one, ancient barriers between species began to fall. On a planet far away, a war general saw the light and whispered. They said humans were chaos, but maybe they're the balance. In a forgotten village, an alien child smiled and said, Mom, the queen's happy. Can I be like her? In the darkest corners of the galaxy, where greed ruled, even there, whispers of this moment began to spread. She chose a human. He passed the trials. Is this the future? Later that night, Alira stood in her private garden. The stars above seemed closer, warmer. She looked at Ethan, who was gently watering a strange glowing flower. You still prefer doing things the simple way, she smiled. I was raised with soil and sweat, Ethan replied. Before I became a soldier, I used to grow vegetables with my mother. Alira's eyes softened. Tell me more, he laughed, sat beside her, and spoke of his past, of Earth, of small meals, of lost friends, and of the moment he saw her frozen in the palace, the moment everything changed. She listened without blinking, because no one had ever shared so much with her without fear. She reached out and touched his hair. I've worn crowns made of gold and stone, she whispered, but none of them ever felt like this. He leaned closer. I don't care about power, he said. I care about you. She kissed him, not as a queen, but as a woman finally free. In the days that followed, the galaxy began to shift. The Union had opened a new door. Humanity was no longer just the dangerous species. Now they were something else equal. New trade paths opened, old rivalries paused. Even the most stubborn species began to ask, what is it that makes humans different? And the answer was simple. They felt deeply. They loved fiercely. And when they chose someone, they gave everything. In a meeting room weeks later, as councils debated treaties and politics, Alira stood with Ethan beside her. One alien noble said, "Your choice still confuses us," Alira replied. "It was never about what made sense to others. It was about what made me whole." And Ethan added softly, "We didn't just change the laws of Valerian. We reminded the galaxy that hearts don't care about species." Their hands stayed locked as they walked out together. Two souls, two worlds, now one, and the stars above shined a little brighter that night. The great halls were quiet now, the lights dimmed, the guests gone. The music faded, but in one chamber, deep in the heart of the Crystal Palace, two souls remained awake. Ethan stood by the tall window, staring at the stars he had never seen. So many, not like this. They shimmered like a blanket of silver fire, stretching far beyond his reach. Behind him, Queen Alira moved silently. She wore no armor, no crown, a soft robe, the color of moonlight. Her silver hair flowed over her shoulders, and her eyes held warmth instead of cold command. This was not the ruler of Valerian. This was the woman who had survived war, loneliness, and doubt, and now stood quietly beside the man who had walked through fire for her. "You're quiet?" she whispered, stepping close. "I'm listening," he replied, still looking at the sky. "Listening to what?" He turned to her. "To peace." Alira smiled gently. It was the kind of smile she had never shown anyone, not in council meetings, not in battles, not even in past private moments. This one was only for him. She stepped closer, took his hand. In both of hers, "You're not just my bondmate now," she said softly. "You're part of this world." "Ethan," he looked at her hand in his. "I never thought I'd find home so far from Earth." She led him to a soft bench beside the glowing wall garden. Tiny blue flowers bloomed, they're ancient and rare. They only bloomed after royal bonding. Fed by emotion, Alira looked at them and whispered, "They bloomed for us." Ethan reached out and touched one gently. "I didn't know plants could sense love, they can hear." She smiled. This palace was built with soulstone. It reflects the heart of its ruler. He turned to her. "So it's blooming because I'm no longer empty," she finished. "I have you." The wind outside changed. The stars above seemed to draw closer, even the planets. Heartbeat hits, deep, soft hum sounded stronger. In that moment, Alira stood and walked to a nearby drawer. She pulled out something carefully wrapped in soft fabric. When she turned back to Ethan, he saw it was a small pendant, shaped like two hands holding a glowing stone. "This belonged to the first queen of Valerian," she said. She wore it. Not for war, not for ceremony, but for love. She placed it in his palm. "And now, it belongs to you." Ethan looked down at the pendant. His hand closed around it, but his voice caught Alira. "Are you sure?" She nodded, her eyes soft but strong. "I want this night to be more than memory," she said. "I want it to be the beginning." Ethan placed the pendant around his neck, then stepped forward and pulled her gently into his arms. No words followed, only warmth, only breath, and the quiet promise of two hearts beating as one. Outside the palace, the news spread across the stars. The queen had chosen her mate. The galaxy watched closely, waiting for mistakes, expecting conflict, but something different happened for the first time in decades. 3 warring systems declared a truce on a mining colony. A human engineer and an alien mechanic opened a school together. On a prison world, 2 rival species sat together in silence, sharing stories of hope. The union of Alira and Ethan had not just changed a kingdom, it had touched the galaxy in the months that followed. New laws were signed. Mixed species couples gained respect. Children born of two worlds were granted protection, and at the center of it all stood the queen and her human bondmate. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight was not about treaties or symbols. It was about two people who had found each other in the ruins of war. Alira lay beside Ethan, her hand resting on his chest. Her breath slow, her heart finally calm. "You changed everything," she whispered, eyes closed. He kissed her forehead. "You changed me first." She laughed quietly. The palace used to feel so cold. He pulled her closer. Now it feels like home. The stars outside pulsed gently, as if they too were breathing. The night held no fear. No shadows, only peace, and a promise whispered between two hearts to face whatever came next, together.